Ellen's character demo does not only take the top spot on the official YouTube channel by a long shot, but her teaser is also in 3rd place, making her one of, if not the most anticipated unit in Zenless Zone 0 when the game was released. And she did deliver. Hoyos marketing certainly helped Ellen gain the popularity she once has had, but her strength at release was definitely nothing to scoff at either. But in between a restrictive core passive, Hoyo shilling Anomaly units, and Miyabi, while once considered the best DPS in the game, even to the point where some players attempted to play her literally blindfolded, she has since then fallen from grace. So, what happened to Ellen Jo? With 4 different sets at her disposal, Ellen had not only great damage in her kit, but also enough build flexibility to make her accessible and well built for basically any player. While Woodpecker and Polar Metal have been great options in both terms of damage as well as their ease of use, Ellen also had access to Puffer Electro and Hormone Punk, which both allowed her damage to skyrocket during the enemy stun window, often one-rotating a boss at the cost of being slightly more difficult to play. Paired with strong teammates such as Lycon and Sokaku, Ellen had access to not only a good stunner who played well into her kit, but also a free support which provided her with a strong attack buff. While Ellen already has had strong self buffs and 100% crit damage for her flash restrimming, as well as a 30% ice damage bonus from her additional core, Lycon boosted her even further with not only a 25% ice res shred, but also an additional 35% stun damage multiplier. And even though Lycon was, and frankly still is, mainly locked behind RNG from the standard banner, or well, by losing your 50-50, Anbi existed as well. While Anbi was not even close to Lycon in terms of her utility for Ellen, Ellen was simply strong enough on release for this to not matter and allowed even free-to-play teams to be particularly strong. Especially during the early days with many players having Ellen, but not everyone owning Lycon, Polydar has been a pairing which has also been seen quite some play. This was partially due to missing knowledge of the game, but also content creators pushing stunners and days as being super valuable for her. All of this paired with easy and partially even free access to strong supports such as Rina, Sokaku, Lucy or Nicole made Ellen not only the strongest premium team on release, but also honestly very accessible. While Rina was probably the strongest support option for Ellen, she was locked behind RNG, and her inherent nature of being much more difficult to play compared to the other options made her the premium choice for the Victoria housekeeping team with Ellen, Lycon and Rina. But exactly because Ellen's most pushed teams have all included stunners, especially free-to-play players started to get creative, playing the first double support compositions, usually with Sokaku or Rina and either Lucy or Nicole. This was also the very beginning of players realizing that Ellen can actually also be played on field, and the best Ellen clears nowadays are doing exactly that, playing her on field even if a stunner is in the team. But let's talk about that again later. The release of Sujuan did not really threaten Ellen's position due to a variety of factors. Ellen was still very much a very good DPS who many people had invested in, and Shiyu defense required at least 2 teams on your account, while also providing buffs for both ice as well as ether simultaneously. As Chingy has not been released yet, Sujuan was also considered even slightly worse on her release, possibly even with Ellen. Unfortunately for Ellen, her strong position was not meant to last for too long, as we soon will enter the Anomaly meta with the release of Jane Doe as well as the likes of Burnice and Yanagi following right after. But before that, while everybody was busy shilling Caesar with Jane and Piper, Ellen actually really liked Caesar as well. Caesar did what Sokaku was meant to do for Ellen, but without being annoying to use, 100% uptime on the buff, a damage boost from her weapon, and more importantly, a shield, which allowed Ellen to not only eat some damage once in a while, but also gain interrupt resistance, which heavily shaped even further on how Ellen is played nowadays, though that might actually depend on your matchup. In fact, Ellen is probably one of the units who benefited the most out of the release of Caesar. With long animation times and no invulnerability during her enhanced basic 3, she was pretty susceptible to eating damage or being interrupted, often resulting in a large loss of damage. But with the release of Caesar, Hoyos soon decided it is time to introduce disorder comps and chill Anomaly for the next month to come. Burnice and Yanagi all outperformed Ellen by a large margin, and with the introduction of multiple Anomaly agents, that also resulted in disorder teams becoming viable. It wasn't even that the likes of Jane and Burnice were so much better than Ellen all by themselves. It was much more so that Shiyu defense began catering to anomalies and disorder comps, just dealing millions of damage within a much shorter time frame than Ellen was capable of. Even Piper, an A rank who was often overlooked, was able to often perform at least on the same level as Ellen, simply due to the ease of access to disorders Burnice provided to the team. But at this point in time, at least one of the two sides in Shiyu defense often still required either an Ice or Ether DPS, and with both Ellen as well as Sujuan being the only options, Ellen was still a much considered pick, especially since Sujuan wanted to be paired with Qingyi, which effectively meant you would need 2 premium units for the Sujuan Qingyi team. When Lighter finally released, many players had high hopes for bringing Ellen to new heights, and while he has been a much needed and strong boost for Ellen's team options, allowing for a double stun composition with Lighter and Lycaon, outside of this team, he was actually not that much of an improvement. Due to the restrictive cores of both Lighter and Ellen, running Lighter without Lycaon was not actually that much of an upgrade. Sure, it helped, but it wasn't as much as players had hoped for. All of this left Ellen in an actually quite unfortunate spot. Not only does she need strong investments in herself, but she also was left with a tough choice. Either you are running still 1.0 units, or you might miss out on your additional ability, both of which have not been that great. With Shiyu's HP rapidly rising, the difference between Ellen's premium teams and her free-to-play options started to show. The release of Miyabi and Deadly Assault were looking grim for Ellen. While Miyabi was officially labeled as Frost and not Ice, it is essentially the same thing in many regards, and not only did Miyabi casually triple Ellen's damage, she also really liked Ellen's teammates. At least if you did not have Yanagi, that is. Lighter, Lycaon and Sokaku were all great options for Miyabi as well, and players still run these team comps up until today. Not only that, but many players have been saving for Miyabi, her being the most hyped and anticipated unit ever since the very first beta of Zenless Zone 0. With Miyabi's banner lasting for the entire patch, many players have not only been able to get her, but also her signature, as well as possible mindscapes. At this point in time, not only did all Shiyu buffs cater to Anomaly and Disorder, but also Deadly Assault heavily favored these playstyles as well. Fortunately for her, however, the very first Deadly Assault also introduced the twin marionettes, who were weak to ice, and while they have been very aggressive, many players have since her release not only been able to acquire more options for the Ellen teams, such as Lycaon, Rina or Caesar, but also have gotten much better equipment ever since then. However, Shiyu as well as Deadly Assault are also rotating game modes, and whenever there was only one ice weak enemy, many players simply chose Miyabi over Ellen. This essentially led to a downfall in her popularity as a pick, and more often Sujuan was seen instead of her. Newer characters have honestly simply been outperforming Ellen, and while everyone got a new support to play with, Ellen was still mainly left with 1.0 units, well, outside lighter that is. Fast forward a few months and the HP increase did not slow down, unlike Ellen, who now started to struggle to clear reasonably well in both endgame modes. Ice weak enemy lineups have been receiving buffs solely catered towards Anomaly, and with Miyabi just being better than Ellen in basically every regard, many players simply chose Miyabi over Ellen for any kind of content. It got so bad that players have been comparing Mindscape 6 Ellen to M0 Miyabi, and some of them found Miyabi to still perform better than a fully invested maxed out Ellen. Obviously, all of that does not mean that Ellen cannot clear. In fact, a well-invested Ellen can still clear 35k or even higher against neutral target nowadays in Deadly Assault. It just takes a lot more investment and skill to do that, as well as a very specific choice of teammates for her, and with 99% of the player base being casuals, many simply chose to go the either way, and that way was called Miyabi. Although that can probably be said for any unit as of right now. Ellen's story is really a manifest of a fall from grace, not because she became unable to clear, I mean, in fact we know that she still can, but because her popularity and role got completely overshadowed by the release of Miyabi. All of it happened also within such a short time, it completely took many players by surprise. Miyabi being such an overpowered and frankly broken unit who fills the same role Ellen did, as well as Anomaly just becoming Hoyo's favorite playstyle to ship, all of that have led to probably the fastest downfall of a meta character in any of the recent Hoyoverse games so far. For now, Ellen is waiting for new supports who synergize well with her kit and playstyle, as well as a new lineup of enemies and buffs within Shiyu defense and Deadly Assault. Hopefully one which favors her yet again. What are your thoughts on Ellen? Can she recover or will she just continue to spiral down? Would her Hollow Zero mechanics help her and strengthen her position if Hoyo ever decides to release it outside of Hollow Zero? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Zenless Zone Zero content, and I wish you a nice day. Peace.